Let me get straight to the point because I know how insane this story is going to sound. My name is Sloan. I am 32 years old, and I am a structural engineer living in Denver. In my line of work, my job is to look at buildings, bridges, and foundations to find the cracks before the whole thing collapses. I spend my days calculating loads, stress points, and failure margins. I am good at it. I can look at a blueprint and tell you exactly where the weak spot is within 5 minutes. But for the last decade, I could not see the massive structural failure in my own life. Or maybe I saw it, but I just kept trying to patch it up with cement made of my own blood, sweat, and bank account. It was a Friday evening, the kind of quiet night I usually cherished. I was standing on the balcony of my rental apartment, looking out at the city lights. Most people my age were out at bars or having family dinners. I was standing there holding a black moleskine notebook that I kept hidden in the back of my underwear drawer. I called it the exit plan. I took a sip of cheap wine and opened the notebook to the last page. The ink was black and precise. I had created a spreadsheet by hand. On the left column, my income, my savings, my retirement fund. On the right column, a running total of every single dollar I had loaned to my family since I graduated college. Tuition fees. Car payments. Credit card bailouts. Rent assistance. Emergency medical bills that turned out to be cosmetic procedures. The number at the bottom of the right column made my stomach turn every time I looked at it. $128,450. That is enough to buy a small house in the Midwest outright. That is a down payment on a dream home here in Denver. That is my freedom, siphoned away, transaction by transaction, over 10 years. I am the eldest daughter. And if you are listening to this and you are also an eldest daughter from a dysfunctional family, you know exactly what that title means. It does not mean you are a leader. It means you are the insurance policy. It means you are the retirement plan. It means you are the designated adult while your parents get to play the eternal victims. My phone buzzed on the railing, startling me. The screen lit up with a text message from my mother, Brenda. It read, "Hi honey. Dad and I are a little short for groceries this week. Can you Venmo $200? We will pay you back on Tuesday when the pension check hits. Love you." I stared at the screen. $200. It wasn't a lot of money compared to the $128,000 in my notebook. But I knew exactly where that money was going. Dad did not need $200 for eggs and milk. My brother, Kyler, was back home living in their basement, and Kyler needed vape pods and probably a carton of beer. I typed back, "What happened to the grocery money I sent last week?" 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. The reply came, "Unexpected bill. Please, Sloan. Don't make this a thing. Dad is stressed. Dad is stressed." That was the magic phrase. That was the trigger code installed in my brain since I was 5 years old. If Dad is stressed, it is my job to fix it. If Mom is crying, it is my job to dry the tears with cash. I switched apps and opened Zillow. I had a saved search for fixer-uppers in a specific historic neighborhood. There was a Victorian house I had been watching for 3 months. Peeling paint, sagging porch, probably needed a new roof. It was perfect. I wanted to buy it, strip it down to the studs, and rebuild it with my own hands. I wanted to create something that was mine, something that no one could take away from me. I checked my savings account balance. I was exactly $15,000 short of the minimum down payment. If I hadn't sent that $5,000 last month for my sister's car repair, I would be a homeowner right now. I looked back at my mom's text. My thumb hovered over the Venmo app. I felt that familiar heaviness in my chest, a mix of guilt and exhaustion that felt like wearing a lead vest. Just this last time, I whispered to the empty air. I opened Venmo, typed in $200, and hit send. I didn't add a caption. I just sent it. A second later, a heart emoji popped up on my screen. I closed the phone, went back inside, and threw the black notebook into the drawer. I felt sick. I was a structural engineer who couldn't stop her own foundation from sinking. I didn't know it then, but that $200 was the last peaceful transaction I would ever make. The cracks were about to turn into a landslide. To understand why I eventually snapped, you have to understand the cast of characters in this tragedy. My family isn't just bad with money, they are bad people who use money to mask their rot. Let's start with Kyler. My brother is 26 years old. In my parents' eyes, the sun rises and sets in his lap. He is the golden child. When Kyler was born, my father, Frank, acted like he had just sired the future King of England. Kyler could do no wrong. If Kyler failed a test, the teacher was stupid. If Kyler got fired, the boss was jealous. Currently, Kyler has been between jobs for 2 years. He calls himself an entrepreneur. His business ventures have included dropshipping cheap sunglasses, a crypto mining rig that set the garage on fire, and now, apparently, professional gambling. He is charming in a slimy way, the kind of guy who smiles while he picks your pocket. Then there is Tatum. My baby sister, 23 years old. If Kyler is the golden child, Tatum is the princess. She lives her entire life for the camera. She has about 3,000 followers on Instagram, but she acts like she is being chased by paparazzi. She refers to herself as a content creator. Her content mostly consists of lip-syncing to rap songs and showing off outfits she cannot afford. I learned to keep my distance from them the hard way. The first major lesson happened on the day of my college graduation. I remember standing in my cap and gown, holding my engineering degree. I had worked 2 jobs all through school to avoid taking out massive loans. I was proud. I thought, finally, I am free. My parents took me out to dinner at a nice steakhouse in Vegas. I thought it was a celebration. We ordered appetizers, and Dad ordered a bottle of wine. Halfway through the meal, Kyler, who was 18 at the time, slid a piece of paper across the table to me. It was a credit card bill. His credit card bill. The balance was $4,200. I looked at Dad. He didn't look ashamed. He looked expectant. Your brother got into a little trouble with online gaming, Dad said, cutting his steak. We thought, since you are graduating and you have that big engineering job lined up starting next month, this could be your way of saying thank you to the family. For raising you. I stared at them. Thank you? I had paid my own tuition. I had paid my own rent. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. Her grip was tight, bordering on painful. Don't cause a scene, Sloan. It is a small amount for an engineer. Help your brother start fresh. I looked at Kyler. He was scrolling on his phone, not even making eye contact. He knew I would pay it. He knew the script better than I did. I paid it. I took my signing bonus from my new job and paid off his gambling debt before I even bought myself a new pair of work boots. That was the moment I should have run. That was the moment I should have changed my name and moved to Alaska. But I didn't. I stayed. And the price of staying kept going up. Flash forward to the present. The family house in North Las Vegas is a monument to bad decisions. It has been refinanced 3 times. There is a boat in the driveway that hasn't touched water in 6 years. Inside, it smells like Glade plugins trying to cover up the scent of dog urine and desperation. Every time I visit, I feel like I am walking into a trap. And 2 months ago, the trap finally snapped shut. It started with a group chat notification. Kyler announced he needed a mental health reset. His text read, "Yo fam, going to Lake Tahoe for the weekend. Need to clear my head. Stress is real." Stress? The guy hadn't worked a Tuesday in his life. But of course, Mom chimed in immediately with heart emojis and praying hands. You deserve it, baby. You work so hard on your ideas. Then came the kicker. Kyler added, "Going with Harrison. We are staying at Harris." Harrison is Kyler's best friend from high school. Harrison actually comes from money. His dad owns a chain of car dealerships in Nevada. Harrison is the guy Kyler wishes he was. Before I could roll my eyes and close the app, Tatum jumped in. OMG. I am coming too. Content opportunity. Plus I need to bond with my big bro. I typed out a message, who is paying for this? Tahoe is expensive. Dad replied instantly, almost like he was waiting for me to ask. Don't start, Sloan. Harrison is covering the rooms and the flight. We just gave Kyler and Tatum $3,000 for food and spending money. It is a gift. Let them live. $3,000. My mind did the math instantly. Mom and Dad lived on a fixed pension and Social Security. Their mortgage was barely being paid. I knew for a fact they didn't have $3,000 lying around. Where did you get $3,000, Dad? I texted back. Sold the old truck, he lied. I knew he sold that truck 2 years ago. But I didn't push it. I was tired. I was at work, staring at a CAD drawing of a suspension bridge, and I just didn't have the energy to fight them. Fine, I wrote. Have fun. I put the phone down, but the knot in my stomach tightened. $3,000 for a weekend trip while begging me for $200 for groceries? The math wasn't matching. But I told myself it was fine. Harrison was rich. Maybe he really was paying for the hotel. I was so naive. I didn't know that quiet weekend was going to cost me my entire sanity. That night, after the group chat went silent, I couldn't sleep. The mention of the $3,000 had triggered something. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, and the ghosts of past checks started floating around the room. The most painful ghost was the Jeep incident. It happened 3 years ago. Tatum had just turned 20. She decided that her brand as an aspiring influencer required a specific aesthetic, and that aesthetic was a white Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. Mom called me, sobbing. We are at the dealership, Sloan. They won't approve the loan. They say our credit is too utilized. Tatum is heartbroken. She is sitting on the floor of the showroom crying. I can't buy her a car, Mom, I had said, standing in the break room at work. We don't need you to buy it. Mom wailed. We just need a cosigner. We will make the payments. I promise. Dad has a side job lined up. Please, Sloan. She needs a safe car. Do you want your sister driving a death trap? That was their weapon of choice, safety. Guilt. Responsibility. I drove to the dealership. I saw Tatum sitting in the driver's seat of the white Jeep, grinning like a shark. She wasn't crying. She was taking selfies with the steering wheel. I walked into the finance office. The finance manager, a greasy guy with too much cologne, looked at me with pity. He knew. He knew I was the patsy. You understand that if they miss a payment, you are 100% liable? He asked, sliding the papers toward me. I looked at my dad. He was standing in the corner, looking at the floor. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad, are you sure you can cover this? It is $600 a month, I asked. Absolutely, sweetheart, he said. It is handled. I signed. A 48-month loan. $600 a month. Guess how many payments my parents made? 3. For the last 3 years, $580 has been deducted from my bank account every single month for a car I do not drive, for a sister who does not thank me. When I tried to take the keys back last Christmas, Dad threatened to call the police and say I stole it. He said, the loan is in your name, but the registration is in hers. You can't take it. Lying in bed, remembering the smell of that finance office and the sound of Kyler flicking that credit card bill at graduation, I felt a cold rage settling in my bones. I sat up and turned on the lamp. I opened my exit plan notebook again. I looked at the number, $128,450. I picked up a red pen. I drew a thick, angry line under the last entry. No more, I said out loud to the empty room. Not another cent. Not for bail, not for blood, not for breath. I didn't know that promise was going to be tested in less than 48 hours. And I didn't know that the price of keeping that promise was going to be watching my family burn to the ground. But looking back, I would let them burn again. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and finally fell into a restless sleep, dreaming of a white Victorian house with a strong foundation and a lock on the door that only I had the key to. That Thursday morning, I woke up at 6 o'clock sharp as I always do. I brewed a cup of black coffee and sat down at my laptop to begin a long day of reviewing structural blueprints. While waiting for the heavy files to load, I habitually picked up my phone and opened Instagram. Tatum's performance had already begun. The first post was a photo taken at the private aviation terminal in North Las Vegas. Tatum was posing next to a luggage cart overflowing with designer suitcases. She was wearing an expensive-looking gray tracksuit and oversized sunglasses despite being indoors. The caption read, "Goodbye Vegas, Tahoe is calling our names. Thank you Mommy and Daddy for the best gift ever." I zoomed in on the photo. There were at least 3 brand new Rimowa suitcases. I knew the price of those, they were about $1,500 each. That luggage alone was worth more than $4,500. Then Kyler appeared in the next story. He was boarding a small private jet, a Gulfstream. He was wearing an off-white jacket and a pair of Balenciaga sneakers that I knew for a fact cost at least $1,100. He flashed a thumb up at the camera, a triumphant smirk plastered across his face. I felt my chest tighten. My parents had told me they only gave them $3,000 for spending money and that their rich friend Harrison was covering everything else. But I had lived with this family long enough to know that Harrison, no matter how wealthy, was not a fool. He might cover a hotel room, but he wasn't buying Rimowa luggage or Balenciaga sneakers for my siblings. I picked up my phone, my hand trembling slightly with anger, and texted my mother, "I just saw Tatum's photos. Where did all that new gear come from? You told me you only gave them $3,000? My mother replied almost instantly, "Oh, Harrison let them borrow those things, sweetie. He is so kind, don't always be so suspicious. Let your brother and sister enjoy themselves for once in their lives. Don't be so bitter, Sloan. Borrow gear?" I muttered to myself in my empty apartment. Nobody borrows designer sneakers and luggage for a vacation. Those are personal items. I knew she was lying. And I knew the price of that lie wouldn't be cheap. I went back to work, trying to push the numbers out of my head. But as an engineer, my brain doesn't allow me to ignore the margins of error. $3,000 could not buy that lifestyle. That private flight, even if they were hitching a ride, cost thousands of dollars an hour in fuel and fees. The unfairness was like acid, eating at my concentration all day. I thought about how I was saving every penny to buy an old house while my siblings were flying through the clouds on money I suspected was being drained from my parents' maxed-out credit cards. By Friday afternoon, the flood of images from Lake Tahoe began to hit Tatum and Kyler's social media feeds. They hadn't just checked into Harrah's, they were in a high-end luxury suite with floor-to-ceiling windows looking directly at the deep blue water of the lake. Tatum filmed a tour of the room. She ran her hand over marble countertops, opened a minibar stocked with expensive liquors, and stopped on the balcony to show off the million-dollar view. "The life I deserve," she wrote. But Kyler was the one who concerned me the most. He posted a short video at a craps table in the casino. In the video, Kyler was shaking dice in his hand, surrounded by a crowd of cheering people. On the table in front of him was a stack of chocolate chips. My heart skipped a beat. In the casino world, chocolate-colored chips usually have a denomination of $5,000 each. And Kyler had at least 10 of them. $50,000. I felt dizzy. Where did Kyler get that kind of money to wager? Harrison might be rich, but no friend hands you $50,000 to throw at a gambling table. Unless it was Kyler's own money. Or worse, it was money borrowed under someone else's name. I screenshotted the video and zoomed in as much as I could. At the corner of the table, I saw a small slip of paper tucked away. It was a marker, a form of credit the casino extends to players based on their financial standing. I saw a loopy signature on it. It looked very much like Kyler's, but Kyler had no credit score to justify a line of credit that large. I began to feel a dull headache. I opened my banking app and checked every single account. I even checked my personal credit report to ensure Kyler hadn't stolen my identity to take out a loan. Everything was fine. My accounts were secure. But if it wasn't me, then who was it? My parents? Where did they get the assets to back a $50,000 credit line? I messaged the family group chat, "Kyler, I saw you at the high roller table. Where did you get those chips?" Kyler replied with a string of sunglasses emojis, "Don't worry so much, big sister. Harrison is handling everything. I am on a massive winning streak. Tonight, I am taking everyone out for gold leaf steaks." I turned off my phone. I didn't believe a word of it. In engineering, we have a saying, if a structure looks too weak to hold the load, it is because it is going to fail. And my family's financial structure wasn't just weak, it was hanging over an abyss. Saturday was the peak of the madness. Tatum posted photos of them on a luxury yacht cruising through Emerald Bay. They were drinking champagne directly from the bottles, the kind of vintage that I knew cost no less than $500 a bottle. But the detail that made me go cold was the photo of Tatum showing off a new Cartier love bracelet on her wrist. It sparkled under the mountain sun. Her caption was, "Gifts from the best big brother in the world. He hit it big last night. #family is everything #Cartier I knew that bracelet." It was the rose gold version with diamonds, retailing for $42,000. $42,000. That number was equivalent to nearly 2 years of take-home pay for an average worker. And my brother, the man who had never held a job for more than 3 months, had just handed it to his social media-obsessed sister like it was a plastic toy. I felt a wave of nausea. I thought about how much I had agonized over buying a new $200 coffee maker. I thought about the nights I spent awake calculating steel loads for skyscrapers to earn every honest dollar. My mother texted again, this time a photo of her and my father at home, eating pizza and watching television. She wrote, "Do you see your siblings? We are so proud of Kyler. He finally found his luck. He promised to buy us a new house after this trip." I didn't reply. I couldn't. If I said the truth, if I said that all of this was a deadly illusion, I would be the jealous one again, the one who always wants to ruin the family's joy. I stood up, put on my jacket, and went outside. I needed the cold Denver air to cool down my head. I walked along the Cherry Creek Trail, trying not to think about Cartier bracelets or champagne bottles. I realized that I was an outsider to this game. And that was the safest place to be. I had drawn the line in my black notebook. I had sworn not to spend another cent. But I also knew my family. When the party ended, when the bottles were empty and the casino came to collect, they wouldn't look to Harrison. They wouldn't look to Tatum. They would look to their most reliable ATM. I returned home at 10 o'clock that night, feeling exhausted. I plugged in my phone, but for the first time in my life, I did something I had never done before. I turned the power off completely. I wanted a night of peace. I wanted to dream about the old house I was going to buy. I didn't want to hear the bells for money or the manipulative crying. I fell asleep at 11 o'clock. I had no idea that 700 miles away, in a VIP room at a casino in Lake Tahoe, my family's illusion had just exploded into 1,000 pieces. Thank you so much for following the story this far. If you are enjoying this and want to see how Sloan handles the chaos that is about to erupt, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, drop a comment below with the name of the city you are watching from. Every comment helps this video reach more people, and I really appreciate your support. Now, let's get back to the nightmare. That Saturday night in Denver was perfectly still. I had turned my mobile phone off, an act that felt like cutting a heavy anchor chain that had been dragging me toward the bottom of the ocean for a decade. I enjoyed the absolute silence of my apartment. I read a few chapters of a book on Renaissance architecture, drank a cup of herbal tea, and fell into a deep, uninterrupted sleep. In my dreams, I was standing inside the Victorian house I wanted to buy. I was painting the window frames white, and the golden sunlight was streaming through the stained glass. There were no buzzing phones, no Venmo requests, and no weight on my shoulders from being the eldest daughter. But the reality 700 miles away was a completely different story. While I was sleeping, the Lake Tahoe fantasy had detonated. What I learned later from the police report and the trail of hysterical messages was a disaster in every sense of the word. Kyler's winning streak had ended in a spectacular crash shortly after midnight. He hadn't just lost his winnings, he had started signing markers for money he didn't have. He was gambling like a man possessed, his eyes bloodshot from alcohol and desperation. By 2 a.m, the casino security had moved in. Kyler had lost control. He screamed that he was a billionaire, that they didn't know who they were dealing with. An altercation broke out, and in his drunken rage, Kyler assaulted a floor supervisor. The Hard Rock security team took him down hard on the marble floor. He was handcuffed on the spot, his ribs slamming into the edge of a card table. While Kyler was being hauled into a holding cell, Tatum and my parents received the news. And their first instinct, like a programmed reflex, was to find me. In Denver, the digital clock on my bedside table flipped to 2:14 in the morning. My mobile phone remained dark and silent in the drawer where I had locked it. But I had made a fatal error. I had forgotten about the landline. I kept a landline solely for work emergencies, for times when a bridge inspector needed to reach me when cell towers were down during a storm. I almost never used it. The ringer was set to high. When it rang at 2:14 in the morning, it sounded like a fire alarm in the quiet apartment. I jolted awake, my heart hammering against my ribs. For a split second, I thought the building was on fire. Then I recognized the shrill, mechanical ring of the dusty phone on my desk. I stumbled out of bed, confused and groggy. Who would be calling the landline at this hour? My boss? Had a bridge collapsed? I picked up the receiver, my voice thick with sleep. Hello? The sound that came through the receiver was not my boss. It was a scream so raw and piercing that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Sloan. Thank God. Why is your cell phone off? We have been calling for 30 minutes. It was my mother, Brenda. She was hyperventilating, the sounds of chaos echoing in the background. I could hear sirens, or maybe slot machines, I couldn't tell. Mom? What is going on? I asked, rubbing my eyes. Your brother is dying. She shrieked. They beat him, Sloan. They beat him like an animal. He is in the emergency room right now. He is coughing up blood. Before I could process the words, the phone was ripped away, and my father's voice boomed into my ear. Frank sounded terrified, but underneath the fear was that familiar tone of demand. Listen to me closely, Sloan. We are at Barton Memorial Hospital. Kyler has massive internal bleeding. His ribs are shattered. The doctor says his lung is punctured. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. What happened? Where is Harrison? I thought he was handling everything? Forget Harrison. Dad yelled. That kid is useless. Listen to me. The hospital is refusing to operate. We are out of network, and because it involved a fight, the insurance is rejecting the claim pending an investigation. They are demanding a cash deposit before they wheel him into surgery. Cash deposit? I asked, my engineer brain trying to find the logic in the panic. Hospitals don't refuse life-saving surgery, Dad. That is illegal. Don't you quote laws to me while your brother is bleeding out. He roared. This is a private facility. They want $28,000 immediately to clear the surgical team. If we don't pay in the next 10 minutes, they are going to let him go into shock. He could die tonight, Sloan. Do you hear me? He could die. $28,000. The number hung in the air like a guillotine blade. It was almost exactly the amount I had in my house savings account. The money I had scraped together for 2 years. The money that stood between me and homelessness if I lost my job. Mom got back on the line, sobbing. Sloan, please. I know you have the money. I know you are saving for that house. But this is Kyler. This is your baby brother. You can buy a house next year. You can't buy a new brother. Wire it. Zell it. Do whatever you have to do. I swear on my life we will pay you back. I stood there in the dark, clutching the phone cord. I closed my eyes. I tried to picture Kyler dying. I tried to summon the panic, the grief, the overwhelming urge to save him that I had felt when we were kids. But nothing came. Instead, I saw the Cartier bracelet. I saw the Rimowa luggage. I saw the $50,000 chip stack. I looked at the number in my head, $28,000. If he is dying, let me speak to the doctor, I said, my voice flat. We can't. They took him to the prep room. Dad lied. I knew he was lying because I could hear a PA system in the background paging a janitor to the lobby, not a surgical floor. Send the money, Sloan. Dad screamed. You selfish, ungrateful, I cut him off. If he is rich enough to fly private and buy diamonds, he can pay for his own ribs. What? Mom gasped. I took a deep breath. And then I said the words that severed the cord forever. Call your golden princess. Ask Tatum to sell her bracelet. I am closed for business. There was a moment of absolute silence on the line. It was the silence of shock. They had pushed the button labeled guilt, and for the first time in 32 years, the machine didn't dispense cash. Then the screaming started again, louder than before. My father was cursing, calling me names that no father should ever call his daughter. My mother was wailing that I was a murderer, that I had ice in my veins. You will never be forgiven for this. Dad shouted. If he dies, his blood is on your hands. I will tell everyone. I will ruin you. I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. I simply moved the receiver away from my face. I looked at the phone cord plugging into the wall jack. It was a thin, beige wire. It looked so fragile. I reached down and pinched the plastic clip. The line went dead. The screaming stopped instantly. I didn't just hang up the phone. I pulled the cord completely out of the wall socket. Then I walked into the living room and unplugged the router, cutting off the internet. I stood in the center of my dark apartment. My heart was beating slow and steady. I waited for the guilt to come. I waited for the panic attack that usually followed saying no to my parents. I waited for the urge to plug the phone back in and apologize, to send the money just to make the noise stop. But the guilt didn't come. Instead, I felt a wave of exhaustion so heavy it was almost narcotic. I walked back to my bedroom. I crawled under the duvet. I closed my eyes. I thought about Kyler. If he was really dying, my money wouldn't save him in the next 5 minutes anyway. And if he wasn't dying, which my gut told me he wasn't, then I had just saved myself $28,000. I fell asleep within minutes. I slept harder and deeper than I had in years. I slept while my family imploded. I slept while the world burned. And for the first time, I didn't care who was holding the matches. I woke up on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. The sun was shining. I made coffee. I watered my plants. I stretched. It felt like a normal Sunday, except for the nagging knowledge that I had essentially nuked my family dynamic a few hours prior. I sat on the balcony and decided it was time to face the music. I plugged the router back in. I turned on my mobile phone. The device vibrated so hard and for so long that it actually moved across the table. 84 missed calls. 150 text messages. 12 voicemails, and hundreds of notifications from Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. I ignored the texts from my parents, I could guess what they said, and opened Instagram. Tatum had been busy. She had posted a video 3 hours ago. It already had 1.2 million views. The video started with a close-up of Tatum's face. She was crying, her mascara running in perfect, tragic streaks down her cheeks. She was standing in a hallway with fluorescent lights. "Guys, I don't usually do this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But my family is in crisis. My brother, my amazing big brother Kyler, he was attacked last night. He is fighting for his life in the hospital." She paused for dramatic effect, sniffing loudly. "We need life-saving surgery for him. But the hospital is demanding $28,000 cash up front. My parents are tapped out. We called my older sister, Sloane. She is a structural engineer. She makes 6 figures. She has the money sitting in her bank account." Tatum looked directly into the camera lens, her eyes hardening. "We begged her. We told her he was dying. And do you know what she said? She said, 'Call your princess,' and hung up. She went back to sleep while her brother bleeds out." She held up a photo of me, a photo from my LinkedIn profile. "This is Sloane Hayes. She lives in Denver. She works for Kiewit Engineering. She is letting her own brother die to save money for a house. Please, if you have a heart, help us. We started a GoFundMe. Link in bio. And please share this. The world needs to know what kind of monster she is." I scrolled down to the comments. It was a bloodbath. User 123 wrote, "I hope she gets fired. What a psycho." User 456 wrote, "Imagine loving money more than your siblings. Disgusting." User 789 wrote, "I found her work email. Let's flood it." I checked my work email. 47 unread messages. Subject lines like, "You are a disgrace, resign now, and we know where you live." My boss, David, had forwarded one of the emails to me with a single line of text, "Sloane, we need to talk on Monday." Is this real? I felt a spike of adrenaline. This wasn't just family drama anymore. They were coming for my livelihood. They were trying to burn down my career because I refused to be their fuel. I didn't reply to the comments. I didn't make a reaction video. I did what an engineer does. I began documenting the evidence. I took screenshots of everything. Tatum's video. The timestamps. The lies about the life-saving surgery. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one. But I wasn't going to fight with tears. I was going to fight with facts. At 11 o'clock, my phone rang again. It wasn't my parents. It was a number from Florida. Aunt Martha. Martha was my mother's older sister. She was the family matriarch, a woman who wielded religion and family values like a cudgel. She hadn't called me in 3 years, not even on my birthday. I swiped answer. "Hello, Aunt Martha." "Sloane Elizabeth Hayes," she began, her voice dripping with disappointed piety. "I am shaking right now. I am literally shaking. Your mother called me. She couldn't even speak, she was crying so hard." Here we go, I thought. "How could you?" Martha continued. "I held you when you were a baby. We raised you to be a good Christian woman. And now? You are letting your brother perish for, what? Greed? Pride?" "He isn't perishing, Martha," I said calmly. "And it isn't greed. Don't you dare talk back to me." She snapped. "You have been blessed with a good job and no children. You have a duty. The Bible says," I cut her off. I didn't have the patience for a sermon. "Martha, do you have a pen?" I asked. "What? Do you have a pen and paper? Write this down." There was a pause, then the sound of shuffling paper. "I am listening," she said, sounding confused. Write down $128,450. What is this number? That is the exact amount of money I have given Frank, Brenda, and Kyler over the last 10 years, I said, my voice steady. I paid for Kyler's college. He dropped out. I paid for his credit card debt. He racked up more. I paid for Tatum's car. I paid for their mortgage payments. I took a breath. Now, Martha, write down the number 0. Excuse me? 0. That is the amount of money you have given them, I said. You judge me from your condo in Florida, but you haven't spent a dime. If you are so worried about Kyler's soul and his surgery, why don't you wire them the $28,000? You just sold your boat last month, didn't you? There was a long, stunned silence on the other end. That is different, Martha stuttered. I am retired. And I am done, I said. If you call me again to harass me, I will block you too. Goodbye, Martha. I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying the quiet part out loud. I had just fired the family matriarch. The most illuminating call of the day came at noon. An unknown number appeared on my screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, thinking it was another internet troll, but the caller ID said South Lake Tahoe, California. I answered. Sloan Hayes. Hello, Ms. Hayes. This is Linda from the billing department at Barton Memorial Hospital. We have been trying to reach your parents, but their phones seem to be turned off. I am not paying, I said immediately. Oh, I know, Linda said, her voice sounding tired and professional. I am not calling to collect payment from you. I am calling because you are listed as the secondary emergency contact, and we need someone to pick up Mr. Hayes. Pick him up? I asked, confused. I thought he was in critical condition? I thought he needed life-saving surgery? Linda sighed. There was the distinct sound of keyboard typing in the background. Ms. Hayes, your brother has 2 fractured ribs and a mild concussion. It is painful, certainly, but not life-threatening. He does not need surgery. We treated him, wrapped the ribs, and discharged him an hour ago. I felt the blood rush to my face. The lie was so big, so audacious, I almost respected it. Wait, I said, grabbing a pen. My parents told me you demanded $28,000 for surgery. They said he would die without it. Linda paused. Well, there was a financial discussion. Since they are out of network, we required a standard deposit for the emergency room visit and imaging, which was about $2,000. However what? However, the police were here, Linda continued. Since Mr. Hayes is in police custody due to the incident at the casino, the financial responsibility is complicated. But the $28,000 figure? That sounds like the total amount of the casino marker he owes, plus his bail. It definitely isn't a hospital bill. I let out a harsh, dry laugh. So, I summarized, my brother is fine. He's just arrested. And my parents tried to trick me into paying his gambling debt and bail by telling me he was dying on the table. I cannot speculate on what your parents told you, Linda said diplomatically. But medically? He is stable. The police have transported him to the county jail. If you want to bail him out, you will need to contact the sheriff's department. Thank you, Linda, I said. You have been very helpful. I hung up the phone and looked out at the city of Denver. They had weaponized my empathy. They had staged a deathbed scene to cover up a felony. They had dragged my name through the mud on TikTok, knowing full well that Kyler was sitting in a police car with nothing more than a headache and some bruised ribs. It wasn't just abuse anymore. It was fraud. And I was the mark. I opened my laptop. I didn't go to the sheriff's website to pay bail. I went to the website of a defamation lawyer in Denver. Then, I drafted an email to my boss, David, with the subject line, regarding the harassment campaign against me, the facts. I attached the hospital call log. I attached the screenshots of the text messages. I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I was a witness for the prosecution. The most damning piece of the puzzle arrived at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. My phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. By this point, I had stopped answering calls, but the caller ID didn't say unknown or scam likely. It said, South Lake Tahoe Police Department. I swallowed hard and swiped to answer. "This is Sloan Hayes," I said, my voice steady. "Ms. Hayes, this is Officer Ramirez," a male voice replied. He sounded authoritative but not aggressive. "I am the investigating officer regarding the incident at the Hard Rock Casino involving your brother, Kyler Hayes." "I spoke to the hospital," I said. "I know he isn't dying." "Is he in custody?" "He is," Ramirez confirmed. "He is currently being held at the El Dorado County Jail. He is facing charges of felony assault, disorderly conduct, and fraud." "Fraud?" I asked. I assumed he meant the unpaid marker. "Yes, ma'am. That is actually why I am calling you directly. When we booked your brother, we confiscated a counterfeit driver's license he was using to obtain credit at the casino." I frowned. "A fake ID? He is 26. Why does he need a fake ID?" "To hide his identity from the credit bureau checks," Ramirez explained. "He was using a Colorado driver's license. The name on the ID was Kyler Hayes, but the address listed was..." He paused, shuffling papers. "The address was 1214 Maplewood Drive, Denver, Colorado. Is that familiar to you?" The blood drained from my face. That was my old apartment address. The one I lived in 3 years ago. "That is my previous address," I whispered. "We suspected as much," Ramirez said. "He used your established credit history at that address to trick the casino system into granting him a $50,000 line of credit. Essentially, Ms. Hayes, he was trying to pin the debt on you. If he had defaulted and walked away, the collections agency would have come looking for the resident at that address. They would have come for you." I sat in stunned silence. It wasn't just a gambling addiction. It was predatory. Kyler hadn't just asked me for money, he had actively tried to steal my financial identity. He was willing to ruin my credit score, my ability to buy a house, my entire future, just so he could feel like a high roller for a weekend. "Ms. Hayes? Are you still there?" "I am here," I managed to say. "Officer, I want to press charges." "Excuse me? If he used my address to commit fraud, I am a victim, right? I want to cooperate fully. I will send you proof of my residence. I want it on the record that I did not authorize this." "I understand," Ramirez said, his tone shifting from professional to sympathetic. "We will add identity theft to the charge sheet. With the amount involved, he is looking at significant time. Bail is set at $8,000 cash only. Your parents have been informed." "They don't have it," I said. "And neither do I." "Understood. Have a good day, ma'am." I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt a cold, hard knot of resolve tighten in my chest. My brother had tried to frame me. My parents had tried to manipulate me into paying his bail. The bridge hadn't just cracked. It had collapsed into the river. And I was done trying to swim against the current. After the call with Officer Ramirez, I went into full engineer mode. I needed to know the extent of the damage. If Kyler was desperate enough to use a fake ID, what else were they hiding? I logged onto the Clark County Recorder's Office website. It is a public database where you can look up property deeds and liens. I typed in my parents' address in North Las Vegas, 450 Coral Shale Street. The search results loaded, and my jaw dropped. I expected to see a mortgage. Maybe a second mortgage. What I saw was a financial autopsy of a dying life. There were 4 active liens on the house. The first was the original mortgage from 20 years ago, mostly paid off. But below that were 2 massive entries labeled HECM, Home Equity Conversion Mortgage. Reverse mortgages. My parents are only 62. You usually have to be 62 to qualify for a reverse mortgage. They must have taken it out the day my dad had his birthday. I pulled out my calculator and started crunching the numbers. Loan 1, $60,000, taken out 18 months ago. Loan 2, $45,000, taken out 6 months ago. That was $105,000 of equity stripped from the house in less than 2 years. Where did that money go? My parents didn't renovate the kitchen. They didn't go on a world cruise. They drove a 10-year-old Ford. It went to Kyler. It all made sense now. The entrepreneurial ventures. The crypto mining rigs. The sudden trips. They had been feeding his addiction by literally eating the walls of their own home. But the final document on the list was the most terrifying. It was a notice of default filed just last week by the lender. My parents hadn't paid the property taxes or the insurance required by the reverse mortgage terms. The bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings. There was a scheduled auction date, September 14th. I looked at the calendar. That was in 3 weeks. My parents weren't just broke. They were technically homeless already. They were living in a house owned by the bank, waiting for the sheriff to come and put a padlock on the door. And the trip to Tahoe? The winning streak Kyler bragged about? That was their Hail Mary pass. They had sent him to Tahoe with the last scraps of their cash, hoping he would turn $3,000 into $100,000 to save the house. It was madness. It was the logic of addicts. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. I finally understood the desperation in my father's voice at 2 a.m. He wasn't just scared for Kyler's health. He was scared because their last gamble had failed. The golden child had gone to the casino to save the family, and instead, he had burned down the lifeboat. I printed every document. I put them in a folder labeled evidence. I wasn't going to let them drag me down into that hole. I had my own house to buy, a house with a solid foundation, paid for with clean, honest money. The final confrontation happened at 6 o'clock that evening. My phone rang. It was my father. I debated not answering. But I needed to close the book. I needed to hear him admit it. I answered. "Hello, Frank." I didn't call him Dad. I couldn't. "Sloan," he rasped. He sounded like a ghost. I could hear the background noise of an airport terminal. "We are at the airport. We are flying home." "I know about the fake ID, Frank," I said. I spoke to Officer Ramirez. "I know Kyler tried to frame me for the debt." There was a long silence. Then a heavy sigh. "He didn't mean to hurt you," Frank said weakly. "He was just trying to buy time. He thought if he won, he could pay it back before anyone noticed." "He committed a felony against his own sister," I said. "And I know about the house. I saw the notice of default online." Frank broke down. He started weeping, a horrible, wet sound that made my skin crawl. "We lost it all, Sloan. The house is gone. The car is gone. We have 30 days to vacate. We have nowhere to go." "Why did you do it?" I asked. "Why did you give him $100,000? He is our son," Frank sobbed. "We couldn't say no to him. He always had such big dreams. We just wanted to help him win." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice trembling for the first time. I had big dreams too. I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to travel. But every time I had a dream, you handed me a bill for his mistakes. Why was his potential always worth more than my reality? "You are strong, Sloan," Frank said. "You can handle it. He is fragile. He needs us." "He doesn't need you," I said. "He needs consequences. And so do you." "Please, Sloan," Frank begged. "Just a small loan. $10,000. Just so we can rent an apartment and get Kyler a lawyer." We can't let him go to prison. He won't survive in there. He will have to, I said. And you will have to figure out where to live. I am not sending $10,000. I am not sending $10. You are abandoning your family, he screamed, his sorrow turning back into rage. You are leaving us to die on the street. I am not abandoning you, I said. I am finally protecting myself. You chose your gamble, Frank. Now you have to live with the payout. Which is zero. Don't you ever call us again, he spat. You are dead to us. Good, I said. That is the first thing you have given me in years that I actually wanted. I hung up. Then I went into my phone settings. I blocked Frank. I blocked Brenda. I blocked Kyler. I blocked Tatum. I sat in the silence of my apartment. The sun was setting over the Rockies, turning the sky a brilliant shade of purple and gold. I felt lighter. Physically lighter. It was as if gravity had released its hold on me. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of wine. I toasted the empty room. To Sloane, I whispered. Welcome to the rest of your life. The fallout was swift and brutal. On Wednesday, the eviction notice was officially served. A neighbor sent me a photo of the yellow sticker on the front door of the house on Coral Shale Street. My parents had to pack 20 years of hoarding and bad memories into a U-Haul truck within 48 hours. They moved into a weekly rental motel on Boulder Highway, the kind of place where you pay by the day and the neighbors are drug dealers. Kyler didn't get bail. The judge saw the fake ID, the flight risk, and the previous record, and denied it. He sat in the county jail for 3 months waiting for trial. Eventually, he took a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to felony fraud and identity theft. He was sentenced to 2 years in state prison, followed by mandatory gambling addiction treatment. I didn't go to the sentencing. I read about it in the local paper online. The article mentioned that his family was present, weeping in the back row. It didn't mention me. Tatum's downfall was perhaps the most public. The internet sleuths who had seen her viral video dug deep. They found the foreclosure records. They found Kyler's arrest record. They realized her entire rich girl persona was a lie funded by elderly abuse and fraud. Her brand deals evaporated overnight. Fashion Nova dropped her. The teeth whitening company dropped her. She lost 50,000 followers in a week. She tried to pivot to victim content, crying about how hard it is to lose everything, but the comments were ruthless. User 777 wrote, "Maybe you should sell that Cartier bracelet you bragged about." She eventually deleted her account. The last I heard, she was working as a hostess at a chain restaurant in Henderson, living with my parents in the motel. As for the email harassment at my job? My boss, David, was amazing. Once I showed him the evidence, he had legal draft a cease and desist letter to Tatum. The email stopped. My career didn't just survive, it thrived. Freed from the constant stress of my family's drama, I was promoted to senior project manager 3 months later. 6 months after the phone call, on a crisp October morning, a moving van pulled up to my apartment building. I wasn't moving because I had been evicted. I was moving because I had closed on the Victorian house. I had done it alone. No cosigners. No gifts from rich friends. Just my own savings, my own credit score, and my own hard work. I carried the last box down to the van. It was the box containing my black notebooks, the ledgers of my life. I hesitated by the dumpster in the alley. I opened the box. I looked at the notebooks filled with columns of numbers, the record of every dollar they had taken from me. $128,000. I thought about keeping them as a reminder. But then I realized I didn't need a reminder. The scar on my bank account would heal, but the lesson was burned into my soul. I tossed the notebooks into the dumpster. I got into my car and drove across town to the historic district. I pulled up in front of the house. It was painted a soft sage green now, with white trim. The porch didn't sag anymore. I walked up the steps, put the key in the lock, and turned it. The door swung open with a smooth, solid click. I walked inside. The house smelled of fresh paint and sawdust. It smelled like potential. It smelled like peace. I walked to the center of the living room and lay down on the floor, looking up at the high ceiling. I spread my arms out, taking up space. My space. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from my bank app. Mortgage payment, paid. Remaining balance in savings, $18,000. I smiled. It wasn't a fortune. But it was mine. And nobody was ever going to touch it again. It has been exactly 1 year since the night I unplugged the phone. I am hosting a housewarming party tonight. It is a small gathering. Just a few friends from work, my boss David and his wife, and a guy named Mark I met at the dog park. Mark is nice. He is an architect. He understands about load-bearing walls and structural integrity. Last week, he left his watch on my counter while he did the dishes. When he came back, it was exactly where he left it. He didn't even check to see if it was there. That level of trust feels like a luxury to me. I am standing in the kitchen, arranging cheese on a platter. The window is open, letting in the cool autumn breeze. I think about my parents sometimes. I wonder if they are still in that motel. I wonder if Kyler is learning anything in prison, or if he is just learning new ways to con people. I wonder if Tatum misses her imaginary fans. But I don't check. I don't Google them. I don't drive past their old neighborhood. There is a concept in engineering called redundancy. It means building extra strength into a structure so that if one part fails, the whole thing doesn't come down. My family was a structure with zero redundancy. They relied on one single pillar, me, to hold up the entire weight of their dysfunction. When I stepped away, the collapse was inevitable. I am not a monster for stepping away. I was simply a pillar that decided it wanted to be a person instead. The doorbell rings. I hear laughter outside. My friends are here. I wipe my hands on a towel and walk toward the door. I catch a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. I look different than the woman in Tatum's video. I look younger. The dark circles are gone. The tension in my jaw is gone. I open the door. Welcome. I say, and I mean it. I invite them into my home, my sanctuary, my fortress. So, I have to ask you, am I wrong for letting my brother go to prison and my parents lose their home to save my own future? Or was it the only way to finally build a life that wouldn't collapse? Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to make a hard choice to save yourself, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below with your thoughts, I read every single one. And if you are still carrying the weight for someone else, maybe it is time to put it down. See you in the next video.